Okay, here we go. I just decided to read another chapter, so that's what I'm going to do. Now we're on chapter 5 out of Perloo the Bold by AVI. So let's dig in. Stomach knotted with tension, legs in pain from Berwig's kicks, Perloo lay on the wooden floor of the room. It was a small square space. The flickering light from the soul candle stuck in the wall revealed no windows, only the one door through which he had been thrown. Opposite where he squatted, a small mound of straw had been heaped. Perloo guessed it was meant to be a bed, though he supposed he could, if need be, eat some of it. When he realized that the floor walls and ceiling of the room were covered with tightly fitting wood paneling, Perloo had no doubt he'd been placed in a jail cell. Creeping into a corner, he pulled up his knobby knees, rubbed his legs, smoothed his scruffy whiskers, then nestled inside his smock, pulling the top and bottom strings tightly to keep himself warm. Searching his memory, Perloo recalled monomers who had been killed after being thrown into jails. There had been Chilork and Whistlepon, notorious cases both. There were Smurl and Jigbur too, not to mention the infamous Nopthang. It made Perloo recollect one of Mogwart's most famous sayings: better to live with 10 monomers in uneasy peace than fight one in a war. Berwig's threat to come back and take care of him filled Perloo with dread. For a while, he considered the way of Abter, who had escaped from a cell by burrowing a tunnel more than 200 hops long. Perhaps he too might dig his way to freedom. Perloo even attempted to pry a board away from the wall so as to get to the earth behind it was of no use. The pulling out of a board might be done with many paws, but not with two, certainly not his two. He was going to have to stay where he had been put. When hunger began to gnaw at him, Perloo half-heartedly hopped over to the straw bed and sniffed at it. It took careful searching to find a few decent stalks, though he only nibbled. The food served to soothe him. Back in his corner, Perloo concentrated on the big puzzle. Why had Berwig treated him in such a fashion? One thing was clear: Berwig was nervous about his succession to the position of grantor. Why that should be so was beyond anything Perloo could guess. But as Perloo squatted there, staring at the blank walls of his jail cell, he recollected one particular discussion with Jolene. The two had been chatting about the history of monomer leadership. She mentioned that in earlier times, leadership almost always went to the eldest of the grantor's cubs. Almost not always. A dying leader could name any monomer who was in good standing to be the next grantor. Perloo had been so surprised by this claim, he checked his library to see if it was true. Jolene was right. Over the course of tribal history, 7 dying grantors had selected someone other than their own cubs to be the new grantor. Perhaps, Perloo mused, it was his knowledge of such times when the successor to a dying grantor had not been automatic that so alarmed Berwick. But surely others knew about these precedents. Was Berwick going to put all monomers who knew their history in prison? Even so, when he asked himself who else might know their history, he couldn't think of any. That made him recall Mogwart saying that too often a monomer will take one today over 3 yesterdays and 2 tomorrows. The more Perloo thought about it, the more a new idea blossomed in his mind. Perhaps Jolene, on her deathbed, was going to proclaim someone other than Berwig to succeed her. Suddenly, like an avalanche, Perloo knew what was going to happen. Berwig was going to be put aside. He would not become grantor. Rare as such an event might be, it was possible. Perloo grinned. Oh, the wonders of history. If you knew the past, you could predict the future. If it had happened, it could happen again. What had Mogwart said? The future begins in the past. Perloo tried to guess from Jolene whom Jolene might select for the new grantor. Knowing nothing of tribal politics, he could come up with no names. It could be any one of 5,000 monomers who lived above Rasquish Mountain. Besides, as far as Perloo was concerned, to compare his own day with the illustrious past was to reveal how dull and unheroic his own time was. What better example could there be than Berwick? Oh, dry dust. Why does it matter? Pellew sighed. The excitement of discovering evaporation. Berwick had him and wanted to get rid of him. His only chance was to stay awake and resist. Perloo, however, was exhausted. Though he tried to keep from sleeping, the gloominess of the cell, its utter stillness and dwindling light, proved too much for his resolution. He soon fell asleep. How long he slept, Perloo never knew. When he woke, it was with a start. The candle in the room had gutted. The cell was dark and cold, but his ears had caught the sound of someone opening the door. It's Berwig, a frightened Perloo whispered to himself. He's come back to kill me. And that's the end of chapter 5. And I kind of just want to keep going because that was a really short chapter too. You know what? Let's do it. Chapter 6, A Visitor. So, the terrified Perloo gazed at the door, trying desperately to recall what the ancient heroes he'd read so much about had done when confronted by a challenge. The best response he could recall was Buxabeck, the Brave's speech at the Battle of Liggins Creek during the 9th Monomer Felbart War. Friends, Buxabeck had said to his warriors when he had accepted the traditional challenge from the Felbarts, sometimes there's nothing to do but square your feet and fight. Square your feet, Perloo kept saying to himself as he attempted to keep his long feet in a fighting stance. Body trembling, breathing labored, continually brushing back his whiskers in agitation, Perloo faced the door. Oh, Magwat, give my legs strength, please. The door swung open. Perloo, a voice called. Are you here? Around the door, illuminated by a candle, appeared the face of Lucabara, her long ears cocked, her blue nose sniffing. Lucabara, Perloo cried, but all but swooning in relief. Thank Magwat, it's you. Lucabara hopped into the room and shut the door quickly. Are you all right? She asked, holding up her candle. Well, yes, I think I am, Perloo replied, heart still hammering and all but faint with relief. A little frightened, but perfectly fine. How did you know to look for me? When I saw those 3 armed warriors follow you and Berwick from the Great Hall, I became worried. Lucabara explained. I tried to follow, but Cineas wouldn't let me go with you. Who's Cineas? Oh, Perloo, don't you know anybody? I guess not. Cineas was that small, stooped fellow who kept giving Berwick advice. Cineas the Sly, he's called, and he's vicious. Anyway, when Berwick returned to the hall without you, looking very smug, I thought I'd better find you. First, I checked Jolene's room. When I learned you never got there, I knew something was wrong. Tell me what happened. It's Berwick, Perloo said. He kept asking me about my talks with Jolene. He's nervous about his succession to Grantor. But Lucabara, I don't care about any of that. I just want to go home. You've got to help me. Perloo, she replied. You must see Jolene first. Perloo shook his head. No, absolutely not. It's too much. All I want is to go home. Lucabara lifted her candle and scrutinized Perloo with a look of scorn. What she said, however, was, They didn't leave a warrior on guard. Good thing. I would never have been able to come. I guess they thought that you'd just stay put. She poked her head out of the cell door. No one's around, she called. Follow me. In 3 hops, Perloo was out of the cell and in a dark, muddy passageway. Which way? He asked. That way leads to the Great Hall, Lucabara said, pointing. We better go the other direction. As they hopped along, Perloo said, How did you know I was in that jail? There are only 3 prison cells in the borough. They're all in a row. I tried the others first, not that they've been used much, not till lately. Perloo halted. What do you mean, not till lately? Cineas is using them for other prisoners. Is this Cineas in charge of things? More and more. They hopped on past what seemed to be Perloo, an endless number of empty passageways and storerooms. Some rooms were empty, others were filled with food, candles, or pelts. You do know your way around here, don't you? He said in admiration. I live here, Lucabara reminded him. Perloo, tell me exactly what Berwig said. It may be important. It seems that he. Shh! She suddenly said, holding up a paw in warning. Her nose was quivering rapidly. From the way her ears shook, Perloo was sure she had caught some troubling sound. He listened and heard it too, the sound of hopping, enough to suggest many feet. I was just in time, Lucabara said in a hushed voice. They're coming for you. Perloo's stomach churned. Lucabara, he said, please get me out of here. Follow me. She began to bounce quickly down a tunnel. Perloo, constantly looking back over his shoulder, followed. After 20 hops, Lucabara took a sharp turn. Just as he was going around the corner, Perloo heard a commotion in the direction from which they had just come. In spite of himself, he stopped and listened. He's gone, came a shout. Escaped. It was Berwig's voice. Treason, conspiracy, rebellion, he cried. Find the traitor. Don't let him get away. Alarm, treason. As Berwig's words were taken up, the sounds of hops multiplied. Perloo felt his arm jerked. Come on, Lucabar cried. They moved fast. Panicky, Perloo moved twice as fast as before, great bounding leaps that covered 3 normal hops at a time. In here, Lucabar cried. Gasping for breath, Perloo followed her into a tiny, dark, foul-smelling room. Lucabara pulled the door shut behind them. Where are we? Perloo asked, holding his nose. They grow mushrooms here. Lucabara, all I want is to get out and stop thinking only about yourself, Lucabara snapped, and be quiet. Mortified, Perloo clenched his teeth and listened. The sound of hops came from outside the little room. Half of you go that way, a small, reedy voice piped. The rest of you go the other direction. Find Perloo fast. He mustn't reach Jolene, or get out of the burrow. If you have to kill him, to hold him, do it. There were murmurs of, yes, Sinus. Don't worry, Sinus. We'll get him. This was followed by more hops, then silence. Perloo leaned against a wall. Tears trickled down his cheeks, flowed along his whiskers, and dripped down to the ground. I think they're gone, Lucabara whispered. Lucabara, Perloo said. Why do Berwig and Sinus hate me so much? If they knew anything about me, they'd know I'd rather stay home with my books. Perloo, Lucabara returned. You still don't understand what's happening, do you? All I know is this, Perloo said, and repeated his conversation with Berwick in as much detail as he could. Lucabara listened intently. Does that make any sense to you? Perloo asked when he finished. Lucabara's only reply was, You must see Jolene. No, Perloo snapped, balling his paws up into fists. How many times do I have to say it? I don't want to be involved. I'm nothing. I'm nobody. A mistake. Just get me out. I'll ski home fast. I'll be nothing but a blur. Is that what you truly want? Lucabara demanded. No challenges? Exactly, Perloo returned. A quiet, simple life of reading and thinking. No fuss, no bother, no politics. No life, Lucabara replied. Lucabara, you don't understand. I can read about heroes. I'm not good at being one. Lucabara studied him pensively. Then she said, Fine. I know some secret doors and passageways. Just be quiet and do exactly what I tell you. Thank you, returned Perloo, relieved that she was finally accepting who he was. Lucabara opened the door of the room and peeked out. Come on, it's safe. The two hopped along the tunnel, their feet making soft flip, flop, flop, flop sounds as they went. Now and again, the Kabara paused. From the way her long ears twitched, Perloo could tell she was listening intently. He listened too, as well as sniffed, but caught no hint of danger. They reached what appeared to be the very bottom of the burrow. The air was damp, the floor oozing with slime and mud, cobwebs guarded by fat spiders draped from ceilings. Odd-shaped fungi grew everywhere. Walls bore ancient pictographs, faded depictions of ancient monomers. Lucabara guided them to a small side tunnel. We'll have to crawl, she warned. Perloo, eyeing the narrow passage at the mud, rubbed his paws nervously. How far are we from the outside? Just follow me. Lucabara got down on her knees, lowered her ears, and began to crawl through the tunnel. Perloo, muttering complaints, did the same. At the end of the tunnel, they entered a small round room high enough for them to stand. In the center was a ladder. Someone sure wanted to make it hard to get outside, Perloo said, gazing up but unable to see the top. Will this get me there? He wondered out loud. Instead of replying, Lucabara began to climb. Perloo followed. It was not easy. Their long feet required them to climb with backs to the ladder, using their heels to step up the rungs. When they reached the top, Perloo was quite sure they had gone from the bottom of the burrow to the top. They hopped into a small clove, empty save for a latch door on one wall. Does that lead outside? Perloo asked hopefully. Go through and you'll see, she said. Won't it be guarded? Perloo asked. I'll check, she said. Lucabara poked her head beyond, then pulled back. No warriors, she announced. Perloo pulled his whiskers and rubbed his paws. Lucabara, he murmured. Thank you for your help. I'm sorry about not seeing Jolene. Please don't think poorly of me. Really, I wouldn't be much of help, and I'm no good at speeches. Just go through that door, Lucabara urged, with a guilt equal to his great relief. Perloo braced himself, then passed through the door. But instead of stepping into the storm, he found himself in yet another room. It was a shadowy place, the air thick with fumes and smoke from pots of burning incense. A few candles provided murky light. Blinking his baggy eyes, Perloo peered through the gloom. Gradually, he made out a high moss bed in the center of the room. On the bed, propped against a bundle of dry grass, looking as frail as an old bird, lay Grantier Jolene. Ooh. Ooh. That was a good chapter. I like that one a lot. There's a lot going on. Okay. So basically, chapter 5 was just Perloo, like, in the cell. And he's just like thinking. He's very knowledgeable about their past and history, and just he's a smart guy, a smart bunny. And then chapter 6 was pretty awesome. They're escaping. He's gonna get killed if they don't escape. He just wants to go home. He's a lot like Frodo and Bilbo. He doesn't want. He just wants to stay at home. He just wants to stay at the Shire and read books, which isn't bad. But I feel like, especially in an instance like this, you gotta step up and do what you can for other people, for your tribe, for your Monomer tribe, man. So he's kind of being forced into that hero character. And yeah, I guess on the next chapter, we will see what Jolene, the main grantor, king or queen of the bunny rabbits, is going to have to say. I'm pretty sure she's going to say, Perloo, you be the new successor. And he's going to be like, I don't want to. I just want to read. And then, yeah, who knows after that. So we shall see on the next chapter of Perloo the Bold by A.V. High.